You're listening to Packers Talk Network. PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans, just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media nonsense they deal with. We're talking about real football, diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season, and now sorting through all of the draft dreams and drama of the offseason. If y'all want to support the pod, please spike that like button for us. Most importantly, jump on over to the YouTube, type in Packers Talk Network. Network's important. That gets you where you're going. Type in Packers Talk. You might not get there. Hit that subscribe button for us. It is very, very helpful. I'm serious. I'm not just like trying to say things right now. Please, please, please go subscribe to the channel if you want to support us. Love you guys. Love the subscribers. Love you guys hanging out with us in the comments every week. And we got a long offseason to get through now. I think we're going to make it fun, right? Obviously, the draft time is fun. Start figuring out who we want to see as future Packers and, who might be a fit. Free agency's coming around. We got all sorts of stuff going on. So stay tuned, guys. We're here every Monday throughout the offseason. Tonight, of course, Hafley headed to Miami. He's on his way out. I dreaded this day. Knew it was coming. Just is what it is. So here we are. Back to square one with the defensive coordinator position. We got LaFleur, Goody, and Ball extended. Ball's important in there. Very important. Let's not let that one get just swept under the rug. What does that mean for the future? And can these guys put the title back in Titletown? Are we just running it back for mediocrity? What are we doing? We got to talk through this. We got to get through this. Do we trust Ed Policy's judgment? Too late. We're on the plane. You better hope it doesn't crash. But first, let's stick to some business. The show, once again, sponsored by Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans, as well as Bucks tickets, Brewers tickets, all those other tickets. Summerfest coming up. Get those tickets. You can buy, or you can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. And remember, support all those local businesses, Wisconsin and otherwise. Tim, how we doing, sir? You staying warm up there in the Northeast?
No, I am not. I've been shoveling snow for the last 2 days and a lot of sledding time, which has been fun. Sledding part, not so much the shoveling.
That's not all bad.
But I'm done with it, and we got a really cold spell coming in this week. So, yeah, I hate winter. I can't wait for it to be over. This is like the worst part of the year because there's no more Packers football real football until September. It's not free agency season. It's not draft season yet, and it's cold and dark and miserable. So I'm not happy. No, not dealing with it well. Not dealing with things well.
We've got a long road ahead, man. We got a long road ahead before we get those nice warm summer days of preseason football. We're just loaded with excitement for this new version of the Green Bay Packers we're about to watch.
And it's definitely going to be different because Jeff Hafley's the new head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So
that's right.
Packers needed new defensive coordinator, and that's the first big move of the offseason, right?
That's got to be it, right? You can't really do anything else until you know who that guy's going to be. I'm curious about the offensive staff. I wonder if any changes come here. I'm hearing some rumors that, unless somebody gets a job offer somewhere else, nothing's changing.
Well, I don't think either one of us or pretty much all Packers fans would be happy about that. I'm interested to see too, and I'm a little surprised we haven't heard anything yet, that it's now, a week since the season ended and there haven't been any changes on the staff until, obviously Hafley getting hired in Miami today. Maybe the contract situation last week with LaFleur was kind of holding, making him hold off on making any changes. I know they go through player exit interviews and coaching evaluations and all that stuff. So maybe all that took time and we're going to hear something soon this week. I think if he's going to make changes, he's got to do it soon because he's going to be competing with all these other teams. There's 10 head coaching jobs that were open. Now there's 7 because 3 have been filled. But you want certain coaches, you got to go out and get them. You're competing with a bunch of other teams. So Yeah, it'll be interesting. I hope there are changes to the offensive staff. I think you can, you got to do. You can't fill the defensive coordinator and then say, all right, now let's do offensive staff. Like you got to kind of do it all. And I know it's a lot to like film, but you got to do it. You got to make your move so you can start interviewing guys and getting position set. So yeah, it'll be interesting this week. I would hope we start seeing some changes to the offensive staff this week. And I mean, they're already. I don't think the defensive coordinator search is going to be as long or include as many candidates as it did last time before they hired Hafley. I think he spoke to like 10 or 12 guys last time. I think it's going to be a smaller group this time. And the way LaFleur had talked in his last press conference, he fully expected Hafley to get a job. And that was before Hafley had even interviewed anywhere. So I think he's been planning for this, and he's probably already kind of back channel spoken with guys he can't officially interview or anything like that until the position's open, which it is now. But I'm sure he kind of knows who he wants to talk to and has, put it out there like that certain guys are candidates. The only one that I've seen so far tonight, as we talk Monday night, is Christian Parker, who he interviewed in 2024 before he hired Hafley. Eagles pass game coordinator, special secondary coach. He's going to come in for an interview, hopefully. Apparently, he interviews in Dallas on Wednesday. So if he gets out of the building without getting the Dallas job, then he's supposed to come up to Green Bay. So I think that's the one candidate that's out there so far. I think he's a really strong candidate. We can get in there.
You can't argue with the DBs over there in Philly, and he's got a Super Bowl ring, and tough to argue with that.
He developed 2 rookie starters on a Super Bowl roster, so pretty strong. He's been in the Fangio scheme. He started in the NFL with the Packers under LaFleur, and at the time, Mike Penton as a quality control coach, and then Fangio hired him when Fangio was in Denver. He stayed on in Denver after Fangio got let go, and went back to Fangio when Fangio went to Philly. So he knows that scheme. He is young, but he's got experience, and if the Packers don't hire him as a defensive coordinator, somebody else is going to real soon. So that's a strong first candidate. He's going to interview guys on the staff. I just think it's going to be a smaller pool this time, so maybe a quicker resolution. I think he kind of knows what he wants more. But that's the big shoe to drop is who the next defensive coordinator. But I'm with you. I want to see changes to the offensive staff, and then obviously, I think everyone's hoping for a change at special teams coordinator. I think that's more of a maybe Rich retires so we don't have to can him sort of thing. Or, maybe there's some kind of like, you can stay on the staff, but we're going to have somebody else in control of special teams. You can be the, assistant head coach or whatever senior assistant role you want to give them. We'll see. But, if there's going to be a staff shakeup, I think it's going to be pretty soon here this week. It's got to be, right? You can't keep dragging it out. You got to start making those decisions so you can start getting interviews and bringing guys in.
Yeah, I think they got to hit the ground running. I agree with you. There's probably some thought that, when Hafley leaves, here's our first orders of operation. And there's a lot of dominoes falling. I don't think anybody expected McDermott to get fired. I didn't. That's an interesting one. Totally understand our friend Arshower's sentiment here. McDermott gets fired and MLF stays. Soft franchise is fine with regression to mediocrity. I hear you. I get it. I feel like McDermott is a couple years down the road from where LaFleur is now, right? They've done this disappointing loss in the playoffs thing
different situation.
A few more times than the Packers have. And, as mad as I was at the end of the Bears game, and as much as I agree with, I think we've got a couple snippets of it. There's a fatal leadership flaw in whatever they were doing before, because regardless of the injuries, you were in position to win and you didn't multiple times in catastrophic fashion. And that's the part where, to me, those things have to be part of the conversation, and so when we're kind of looking at like who's going to replace Hafley and then on to the rest of the staff and kind of analyzing that, whoever replaces Hafley could set that tone, and And one thing I didn't even kind of realize this until I tweeted it a few days ago. Is the tweet or the video from Hard Knocks of Campanelli, getting kind of fired up in the film room. And it's just like, dang, man, like that voice was in the Packers linebacker room last year. And when you think about that, that's a linebacker coach, not to like downplay Campanelli. He's already interviewing for head coaching positions for a reason. So he seems like a great coach. But he was a linebackers coach a year ago. And, like you could tell a difference, right? Like there was definitely a big difference. We were sitting here talking about Cooper as an all-pro, and then he kind of, I don't even want to say he had a regression. I just don't know that his responsibilities were the same. But there was a fire about that team before, and all it took was one voice. So imagine you get a louder voice, right? It's not a linebacker coach, but the actual defensive coordinator with the same attitude of let's go punch people in the mouth. Well, maybe now the offense can adopt a little bit of that too. That kind of attitude can be contagious for sure. So I don't know that you need to replace LaFleur to solve the problems that undoubtedly exist. But you got to hope that they're acknowledging it and addressing it, right? I think the biggest fear I have is they're looking at this going, man, there were a lot of injuries. Let's run it back. You guys were good before the injuries hit. Like, if that's where the thought ends, that's scary. That's not good because you still have to analyze the epic collapses that happened.
Yeah, that's true. And look, I'm very skeptical of LaFleur being able to make this work again. Like, if we're sitting here in this spot next year, I'm totally on board with letting him go. Like, I'm not going through that again. Like, I can't see the late season collapse and then go to the playoffs. And either, the Philly game last year, they really weren't ever in that game. And then this year, they choked. They blew a big second half lead that should never happen. Like, if we're in the spot next year or a similar situation, I know there's context and you got to see how everything plays out and who's on the field and who's not. I get all that. But if it's similar to this, move on. And I understand that people are frustrated that he's coming back. Totally get that. Totally, I understand. But I also think there's reasons to bring him back. I think there's things that he does in a positive way. To compare him to McDermott, again, like I can see that, but there's a lot of context there. The Bills are in a different spot than where the Packers are, right? Like you got Josh Allen further along than Jordan Love. Like I like Jordan Love, but he's not Josh Allen. They're Super Bowl or bust. This is year 3 of a new situation, a new roster, a new quarterback for the Packers. They're 9 years in, with McDermott and whatever 8 years with Josh Allen. They just can't get over the hump. Now, I think if you let McDermott go, they should have let the GM go first because I don't think their roster was as good this year as previous years that they've had. But that's another, we don't want to get into Buffalo stuff.
Yeah, we're not Buffalo's problem.
Yeah. So like, I can see why they let him go, but like now they're in a really tough spot because it's Super Bowl or bust. And like, are they going to bring in a new guy that's going to, especially if they make a first time head coaching hire, like that's going to be the guy that's going to get you over the top. I don't know. And that's the risk you take. But yeah, with LaFleur, there's definitely concerns, but there are still a top 10 offense, top 5 offense when they're healthy. That's his bread and butter, right? Like he's the play caller, he's the designer. That's what he does. And they made the playoffs every year but one. He got 2 MVP seasons out of a quarterback who was regressing and wasn't at the same level he was before. And he's developed Jordan Love 3 years as a starter to top 10, top 5 quarterback, however you want to rank him. He's done that. Like that's his guy. And he's had the youngest roster in the league 3 years in a row. I know they're young, and we're trying not to use the young thing as an excuse. And I'm not saying it's an excuse, but they're the youngest roster 3 years in a row. But he's gotten them to the playoffs 3 years in a row, going through all those growing pains and the mistakes that come with being a young, inexperienced roster. Like he is a damn good coach. Now, can he go from being a good coach to being a Super Bowl coach? That's the big question. And there are tons of things that need to be figured out, like soul searching wise with him. Like they need to be a team that figures out a way to close games. Like that's their problem. They're not closers right now. Can they do that? Can they be a team that's tougher to play against? I don't know. Like he's going to have to change his ways. Part of that can be with the coaching staff and the changes that he's going to make. Part of that's the players that they bring in, right? And that's on the front office as well. But yeah, it's Matt's show now, and it will be interesting. How much change can he make? I don't think he needs to completely like reinvent himself as a head coach, but there needs to be a deep dive in like, why do we keep having recurring issues like this? How do we get through it and resolve it? Because I know they've looked at it before, and maybe they try to change this, they try to change that, but it just hasn't worked. So like, what's the underlying issues here, and how do we get better at it and improve? So yeah, I'm skeptical, right? Like I don't know, but I want it to work, obviously. And I still think there's a path for it to work where this team can get through it, get over the hump, and start going on deep playoff runs.
Yeah. And, I think one thing, context matters a lot because of the different situations, but you got to look at what you have versus what you don't have. Yeah. Right now, I think one of the things that convinced me is the coach quarterback relationship between LaFleur and Love. It's not bad. Right.
Really
I
strong.
think I've had my complaints about like, I think maybe LaFleur's got some scared play calling, and he's not perfect, but it seems to be a pretty good relationship, and if we're going to sit here and say Love's the guy, he's the franchise guy, well, there's two guys that get credit for that. Goot had the balls to go get him, and LaFleur has developed him. And you can't say that he hasn't. You can't, well, Jordan Love's just good. Nah. That's not how the NFL works when it comes to quarterbacks, right? Like there's talented guys that come in, but if you don't have a good relationship in there, it falls apart real fast. And we've seen that. We've seen that with others in the past, how Jeff Fisher was accused of ruining quarterbacks. The difference between what it looked like with Jared Goff under Jeff Fisher as a rookie versus what Jared Goff looked like under McVay. Like there's a lot there. And honestly, what Aaron Rodgers looked like before LaFleur got here versus after. You can't say that dramatic of a change that LaFleur just didn't have anything to do with that. Rodgers is just the GOAT. Yeah, Rodgers is amazing for sure. But and I remember it. I don't know that we'll be able to pull any receipts or get anybody to admit that this was their stance. But I certainly remember people talking about him as if he was washed up before LaFleur got to Green Bay. They were starting to use washed up, and Rodgers on his way out, and then LaFleur got to Green Bay, and things changed. And so that's where it's like you can't discount these things. I get that we want to be frustrated about some things, but you can't discount these things. You can't discount Goot having the balls to go get him. Being able to see that guy is there and see that that's the guy worth kind of putting your neck on the line for and doing it and then being right about it. Yeah, man, I want that guy pulling the strings for my team as a GM. Like that's a hell of a dude right there. And he's not going to be perfect. He's going to be wrong. He has been wrong, right? There's glaring examples of horrific misses that we can just rant about all day. What if we had Creed Humphreys at center? What if we had, insert receiver? I'll tell you, what if we had an insert receiver? They would have put him on the bench for the rookie year. But anyway, I think you got to look at the totality of the work and go like, yeah, like these guys aren't perfect, but damn, they've done some things very, very well. So if you can maintain the things they've done well and then fix the things that haven't worked, now you really got something. Hopefully that's the way policy is seeing it. But I kind of ventured away from our topic here of who should replace Hafley, who will. I think what's that?
We can get back to that. I got names, but we can.
Yeah.
We'll
so that's where I think I let the comments. I see our guys in the comments. I see you, Chris, over here. So it's Goot's at fault. I totally understand all the sentiment of all this.
It's not perfect. No,
it's not perfect.
But I have issues with the roster that Goody gave the coaching staff this season, right? But it's always not going to be perfect. Look at the 4 teams that are left. Like, go down their rosters. They're not perfect. Like, there's weaknesses on all 4 of those teams. But Goody has done a heck of a job, right? And he does put together a strong team. He went out and made the big trade for Micah Parsons, which is different from what they've ever done. And I think what they're doing is just continuing what Bob Harlan and Ron Wolf established 30 some years ago. And like, they see that it works. Yes, we would love more Super Bowl championships. I get it. And we would like this regime to get us there and get a championship. But it's stability and it's building this foundation. And like the teams, like if they fired coaches as much as the fans want them fired, like you'd be turning coaches over every year. Right. You would be the Raiders. Like they fire coaches every year. Where does it get them? They suck. The Giants, the Jets, like those teams continually make coaching changes or GM changes, and it doesn't get you anywhere. Like you do need stability. You do need to have that foundation in place. And like, this is the players that we look for. This is how we develop them. This is what we want in a head coach and a coaching staff. And this is like, it's been set. It's been set for over 30 years now. Is it perfect? Hell no. There's no perfect way to do it. Nobody does it like that. Every team makes a ton of mistakes, but it's the ones that can have that stability and develop their plan and stay with their plan the longest that will continually be a contender, that will continue to be in the mix. And that's what the Packers have been. Do they have to take the next step? Absolutely. And that's the part, like, okay, how do we go from being in the mix, a contender, a playoff team, to now we're a team that's going to be deep in the playoffs every year. We're going to be a Super Bowl contender. That's what they have to figure out. But yeah, I think to just like go and fire everybody like some people want and start over and clean your house, like it just doesn't make sense. And right now, when you have Micah Parsons and Jordan Love in the prime of their careers, like, and you want to start over, and start rebuilding and like forget about 2026, like no, like that's crazy talk to me. This is the time to take a run. So yeah, I have confidence in what this organization has been about for the most part over the last 30 some years. And I just think, and policies continuing that. That's what he saw. That's what he's seen since he's been here working with Mark Murphy. And that was what was established before Mark Murphy got here. And they see the continual success in that. And you can look around the league and see all the teams that change plans. You know, we're going to go with this guy and this is how we're going to build our roster. And 2 years later, nope, we're firing everybody. Now we're going to do like, and it gets you nowhere. You just keep losing. And Green Bay doesn't want to do that. So you might not agree with it, but this is why we're sometimes called Entitled Town. We're at least in the mix, right? We're not talking every year about changing coaches, changing GMs, and coaching searches. Be happy about that.
Well, and being in the mix, it sounds complacent, but really that's what it takes. Like, you know, and there's plenty of stories. Go back, I mean, even the Packers with their 2010 run, but the Giants with their runs. There's so many examples of Super Bowl champions that were wild cards that just got hot at the right time. They weren't the perfect roster with the perfect coaches and the perfect play call. They were the guys that got hot at the right time. You know, maybe they were the lesser injured, but not even the Packers. They had the most players on IR. So that's what I mean. Like, I think that's what they're thinking too. It's not perfect, but if you're there, you have the ability just as much as anybody else to get hot at the right time. Now, I think if you're trying to do that with the same, you know, the same version of a team every single time, like you're not trying to change up your scheme, change up your players and all that kind of stuff, that's different. They haven't been guilty of that. You know, the offense has evolved, the defense has evolved. Special teams was cursed, so we don't know what the hell's going on there. I mean, obviously we want Bisaccia fired, but you know, Mike Wall made a good point. You know, if this problem has persisted across multiple coordinators, it's probably not the coordinator's problem. It's just like, all right, I'm hearing that, man, because before he got here, he was regarded as one of the best. What, now he just stinks for some reason? I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. I mean, it's the surface. That's what it looks like on the surface, but you know, and I think you just got to look at these things and results matter, but what goes into the decision making matters too, you know. And so, you know, our friend Chris here, he says Good only drafted one All-Pro season or one All-Pro guy in 8 seasons. Not good, proven. It's not good, proven guys, but he also signed Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs and other guys that have done well. And you can't tell me you're just totally dissatisfied with everybody he's drafted. Nobody's mad about Edgerrin Cooper or Evan Williams, I mean, the offensive line, we can complain about it, but they're not the worst. They're far from the worst, and they've been serviceable under less ideal conditions. Yeah, you missed on Aaron Banks, it seems like. So, yeah, you're going to miss on some guys. Nobody's perfect. But I think, you have to look at the totality of the work. You can't just be like, well, guy hasn't, drafted a bunch of all pros, so he sucks. Like, I don't think so, man. Like, look at the 49ers did. I mean, they swung and missed on Trey Lance. And because of the way they handled it, they drafted literally with the last pick of the draft, they found their guy. So it's like, who cares where you do it? If you got the guy, you got the guy.
Gutekunst drafted a franchise quarterback, and he drafted him. He drafted him when he had a 2-time MVP, well, 4-time MVP, but back-to-back. Or no, he wasn't MVP yet. I'm sorry.
He did it at a time where your balls had to be big, dude.
Exactly. Like where he had Aaron Rodgers, a future Hall of Famer, on his roster, who wasn't close to being ready to leave or being ready to retire or anything like that. And he went out and got Jordan Love. Like, he got you a franchise quarterback. And yes, he's had misses, but like, people make it sound like every guy he's drafted has been a bust. Like, I'm sorry.
Far from it.
Jair Alexander, I know it didn't end well once he got his injuries, but that was not a bust.
Started awesome.
He started, right? Second contract. Like, guys that get a second contract, that means they're pretty good. Sean Gary, I know it. Time to move on. But when they paid him at that point, he was an ascending player. Now, unfortunately, I don't know what happened after that. Did he miss on Eric Stokes? Yeah. Now, injuries had a lot to do with that.
But now look at Eric Stokes. He's a good player. So you can't spell Goot sucks.
Does he get credit?
The coaches need some blame here, man. Like, that's where it's like, I don't blame Goot for sitting over here going, I don't think I want to be responsible for your guys' decisions. I'm giving you assets and you don't know how to use them.
And people just they like to pick like certain players, and it's like, okay, well, if you're going to pick all the first rounders, like he found a starting left tackle in the 7th round. There's not many of them, right? He found a starting cornerback in the 7th round. Zach Tom was a 4th round pick. Like, Tucker Kraft was a 3rd round pick. We can go down the list. Like, he's found them throughout the draft. Has every pick worked out? No. There's not a single GM that's ever drafted who had every pick work out.
Most of them are around 50%. That's why they try to maximize their picks, because they know that. And if I'm hitting at 50% while you're hitting at 50%, but I'm drafting twice the amount of players, I've got twice the amount of hits. It doesn't matter where I got them from, And if you go back, you look at the Packers compared to the Bears, you'll find that's the difference between the teams.
Compare him to like any team. He's done a better job than most teams in the league drafting. Right. And for free agency, for the most part, they missed on Banks. They missed on Hobbs. That was not good. That hurt him this season, and that's going to hurt him going forward. Those are pretty much the 2 big misses. Maybe the only misses they've had in free agency, right? He started out with the Smith brothers and Adrian Amos. Yeah, great picks.
Good pickups.
Jacobs, McKinney, they were great picks. The draft, for the most part, has been pretty good. Yes, he has his misses, but like, I'm not going to go through a list right now. Here's the guys that worked out. Here's the guys that didn't. Let's argue about it. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, every guy you pick isn't going to be an all-pro or a Pro Bowler. It doesn't work like that. If you're picking a guy on the 3rd day and he turns into a starter, that's beyond expectation, right? 7th round picks, you turn into starters for you, and we can say, well, Valentine didn't play that well this year. Yeah, maybe not, but he's far exceeded any expectation for a 7th round pick. And yes, Rasheed Walker's going to walk away. Guess what? Somebody's going to pay him $20 million a year, and he started for you. He was a 7th round pick. That far exceeds anything else. Like, a 7th round pick.
The salary cap advantage that is. That's a massive salary cap advantage. You can't underplay that. Right. You can't be like, well, he's not the best left tackle in the league. Yeah, but even if he's the middle of the pack for a rookie deal of a 7th rounder, brother, that's stealing.
Yes.
Like, that's like they got away with highway robbery with the left tackle position. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it was serviceable for free, basically. So
go look at other teams and how they draft and come back and say that Goody deserves to be fired. Like, get out of here.
There are not 10 GMs in the league better than Goody. There's not. And he's not perfect. But again, and I see you guys, total body of work. But it's beyond the draft. It's the team building. So where he has missed in the draft, he's made up for it in free agency and in trades, right? Let's not forget Micah Parsons. He's still the best defensive player in the league, arguably. I will argue that when he's healthy, he is the best defensive player in the league. Goody went out and got him, and nobody can argue that it was a bad trade. It just wasn't, especially if you want to beat the guy up for not being good at drafting first-round guys. Well, great. He just got rid of picks that he's not good at anyway, so who cares? But to me, it's just I'm not always in favor of you don't know who you're going to get, so let's stick with what you got. That's not always the right answer. That wasn't the right answer with Joe Barry, right? You knew that Joe Barry wasn't the answer. Nobody knew who Jeff Hafley was when you fired Joe Barry. But Jeff Hafley was out there, and LaFleur found him. So, like, you got to trust that these guys see the horizon. They see the landscape of what's available. And you got to give them the benefit of the doubt to say, like, look, if this is the best option, this is the best option. I trust them. And that's kind of the question. In policy, do we trust, right? You got to find out. We don't have a lot of evidence. So we got to, as Packers fans, put blind trust in him and trust that he's in the position he's in for a reason, right? He didn't just stumble his way into becoming the president of the Packers. That's the other thing. Like, that was like a long process. And he was part of the hiring of LaFleur. He was part of these previous things that happened. So he sees the landscape. Like, if he being part of the crew that hired LaFleur, he understands what's available out there for potential head coaches, right? Did any of us really think about Matt LaFleur as the head coach when they were doing that? I didn't. When they said Matt LaFleur, I'm like, oh, there's a guy I haven't really heard about. Let me figure out who he is. And so that's what it's like. You got to trust that they see the board, and it may not be that LaFleur's the best guy for the job out of all of the land, but he's probably the best guy for the job that was available or would be available. And I know there was scenarios out there you could trade him and all this stuff. It's like, not all that's realistic. We can't trust that that's like this. They looked at it like, oh, well, we're not trading our head coach for a first round pick. I just don't know how realistic that was. It's happened, once with John Gruden? Has anybody else ever done that?
I'm sure it's happened more. I can't think of any, but that Gruden's the one. He was the last.
That's where it's like,
it's just nobody does that.
It's right? There's way too involved. It's hard to, I don't know. I would just imagine that's hard to evaluate the value of a coach with draft picks. But either way, like, you can't sit here and think that you know better than Ed Policy right now. Now, you let it play out for sure. We'll tell him he's wrong later on down the road if he's wrong. But you can't sit here and say, well, I know better and this isn't the guy, because you don't have the information he has. We don't have the information to what was available and what it would cost. What is LaFleur? We just still don't know the details of the deal. One thing that I'm willing to believe is Ed Policy sees the issues. Like, look, dude, you guys have some epic collapses. Like, we got to figure that out. It's not like it's the same thing with like the Christian Watson hamstring. Like, they didn't look at that and go, well, tough luck. Like, dude, this is a problem. We're going to figure this thing out. Seems like they did, so you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, they're looking at these problems going, let's solve them. But solving them isn't always with an axe, right? You don't just come in and cut the tree down and say, let's grow another one. So I think you got to give them the opportunity to say, look, if you can go back, you fix a few of these issues, hopefully stay healthy enough, then that should be all the difference. And instead of having to make a 180-degree change, you make like a 2-degree change, and you end up where you want to be. So that's where it's just, for me, I admit, like, I definitely flip-flopped on my decision, right? Like, whenever the Chicago game ended, I was all on the fire LaFleur train. Get him out, we're done. But since hearing, the arguments to defend him, it's like, it's hard to argue with that. And I've been on the Goody train. I have never once thought that Goody's the guy you got to get rid of. He's done too many things in different ways. Even with guys like Rasul Douglas and Devondre Campbell, I know though, Devondre Campbell didn't end well. You still got an all-pro season out of that guy, like a legitimate all-pro linebacker season out of the guy. That's phenomenal. From a street free agent, guy was just wandering around, and you turned him into an all-pro for a year. That's awesome. If you get that out as a GM, Rasul Douglas, you just picked him off of a practice squad and you turned him into a third-round pick after getting great play out of him. You won games because that guy was on the field. That's great. Like, you have to give the GM credit for moves like that. And that's where I look at it and go, he's done well. And people like to crap on Jair Alexander. You forget how he got Jair Alexander. He picked up an extra first-round pick for Jair Alexander. And he turned it into Darnell Savage, which everybody's mad about that too. He sucks too, right? But he still had great play. Like the Cowboys game, are you kidding me? Like, come on. Like, Darnell Savage wasn't just a wasted draft pick. He wasn't an all-pro, but you got good play out of him. So it's just, you got to look at all this stuff, the moves that they did, and you can't just look at the current roster and go, well, these guys suck, so the GM must suck. That's just not how it works. Yeah, and I think the other thing that you can see is coaching matters. Coaching definitely matters. So when it comes to, well, what about LVN? Well, I think if LVN was healthy this entire season, none of y'all would be asking about LVN, because you'd be like, oh, this guy's legit. Here he is. He had a breakout season. Because the times that we did see him on the field, he was pretty dang good, especially before he got hurt. But even there at the end, he was one of your only good defensive linemen left. So you can't also look at these things like they're final. Like, it's, these guys are still developing. Wyatt's still developing. The receivers are still developing. Tucker Kraft doesn't get hurt. Now you got another all-pro. Tucker Kraft is on pace for an all-pro season. Is it Goot's fault that he didn't get an all-pro this season? He drafted him in the 4th round, man. Like, that's where it's just, you got to let these things play out. And I think, just to your point, you can't just go off and fire everybody because you're upset. I think LaFleur was definitely the one that everybody had the best gripe about because of the leadership failures. When you talk about who has provided talent to this team, and Ball, if anybody's talking about firing Ball, you hadn't been paying attention. We're not even having that conversation. That guy is probably the best at navigating the salary cap in the entire league, and the Packers are lucky he's still there. He's like Hafley, man. Like, his days are numbered in Green Bay. He will get a promotion out of there, but we should cherish him as long as we have him, because he's on the salary cap.
He's done a great job of, like, they're never in trouble with the salary cap. The only time they was close to it was, the time when they were trying to keep the team together with Rodgers and right. And part of that was the salary cap wasn't moving because of the COVID year, and they had to kick a lot of stuff down the road, but like, they got through that pretty quickly, whereas a lot of other teams would have probably been in cap hell for a while longer, and they were able to turn it around. So yeah, Russ Ball does a really good job with the contracts, and he's been there for a long time now. I didn't even know his contract was up, but it makes sense that it's up at the same time that Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst's contracts are up as well. So yeah, great job extending him. I have no problem with that one, and I'm with you. It was never in doubt that Brian Gutekunst would be back. The LaFleur one, though, and we've debated it plenty here, so I don't think we need to get into it anymore. We've been doing that the last couple of weeks, but that was the one where there were a lot of questions, and I still am skeptical and have questions about it going forward. But like, I understand why they are bringing LaFleur back, and we can argue about it all we want, but he's the head coach, and like, nothing's going to change that right now. Certainly, another poor finish next season could, but like, and people were arguing, I see in our comments, about regression and nobody's gotten better, and that's not true. Jordan Love's gotten better.
It's not true at all. Tucker Kraft is an all-pro.
Like, you're right, and they brought in a good defensive line coach, which maybe
Wyatt's gotten better for sure. Devontae Wyatt,
right? And like, my point being, like, just because they're not getting better to be all pros, some guys just aren't capable of that. Like, Colby Wooden came in as a 273-pound defensive end. He's now around the 300-pound nose tackle. Is he ever going to make an all-pro or pro ball? Absolutely not. But he's developed, and he was a better player this year. Needs to play fewer snaps. I think he was getting worn down, but like, they did develop guys. Christian Watson's developed, right? Yeah. Jaden Reed's gotten better. Sean Ryan, who back and forth with him, but he was better as a center.
He was on the roster bubble there for a minute. Now he's one of the guys.
People forget Zach Tom was a 3rd-day draft pick, 4th round, right? Like, oh no, you can't. Like, they developed Zach Tom. He didn't come in like as one of the best right tackles in football. They developed them, like, so they have developed guys. Do we want to see them develop more? Absolutely, and part of that is coaching, and we'll see if they make the changes that we're hoping they make, that they can develop more. But like, to just say like nobody's developed and everybody's regressing, like, no, that's just not true. You have a thought in your head, like, I don't want this guy to be the head coach, and like, I'm not going to give him credit for anything. So you can't change people. But yeah, I think we're on board. Ball and Goody should be back, and LaFleur, definitely the Bears game made us kind of hesitate with that one. Where, personally, if they would have fired him after the Bears game, I understand it. Like, I get it. But I also get bringing him back. So he's back. Things got to improve. He's got to get better. But I understand, like, the positive reasons to bring him back. And I see that there's a path for them to get better, for him to get better as a head coach and take this team where it needs to go. And hopefully it happens. And if we're sitting here next year having this conversation again, I'll be ready to move on.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I say, like, you got to trust in policy because you don't have any data to not trust them yet. But yeah, with LaFleur, it's not just a blind trust forever. Like, I think that there's very much a microscope on how he handles what comes next. And if you have these epic fourth quarter collapses again next season, like, you gotta change something. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I believe that Ed Policy wouldn't do that now, right? Like, I gotta believe that he's not looking at the picture that he saw this season, regardless of injuries, and going, yeah, you know what? If we don't have injuries, we're fine. But you can't say that either because the NFL, you're gonna have injuries all the time. That's right. We won't be privy to some of the changes that get made. We just won't, right? Like, and I got to learn this a little bit. Like, the Packers are super private. Like, last year when I was covering the Shrine Bowl, I requested an interview with Sean Duggan, who at the time was assistant linebackers coach. This was right before he got promoted to linebackers coach because Campanelli left. And I got denied. I'm thinking, I'm at the Shrine Bowl. He's an assistant linebackers coach. Why can't I just talk to the guy? And they told him no. So, like, the point being, like, the Packers don't let anything out that they don't want to let out, right? That's just, if there's information they don't want you to know, you're not going to know it. They're tight-lipped, and they can be. So that's where I look at it, go, I got to believe that these people, and especially somebody like Ed Policy, who's not an owner, he is held accountable by a board of directors, right? You got to keep that in mind, guys. Publicly traded team, or not traded, publicly owned team, excuse me. He is held accountable. So if he says, I believe in LaFleur, and LaFleur continues to screw up, eventually the board of directors gets involved and goes, dude, what are you doing? Like, can we please stop?
Maybe.
Like, it eventually comes through, and that happens. Like, we're fortunate as Packers fans. We don't have to worry about the nightmare of a Jerry Jones, where that guy is just going to be there till he's not. And then guess what? He's got like 3 generations of family in line. And if you think anybody's selling that bad boy, you wrong. But that's not what Packers have to worry about, right? The Packers fans, if we go through a rough patch, it's going to be 3 to 5 years. And then the board of directors gets involved, and hopefully the course gets corrected. We haven't seen that since the 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? There's a reason for that. They got a model. They don't just sit there and go, yeah, it's fine if we just stink in the fourth quarter historically. Like, you just can't. They're not going to do that. None of them will get to hang around if that is what they do. So I do think that LaFleur is on a short leash, and I do think that there were discussions about how you make changes to avoid these issues in the future. Like, you have to have those discussions. And if you think that if policy's not having those discussions, I think that's, I don't know, it's kind of naive. Like, that's this guy's job, is to make sure this team does what it's supposed to do. Like, if he's not addressing fatal flaws in accomplishing that goal, he's already not doing his job. So if you guys are just assuming he's not doing his job, I mean, that's kind of, I don't know. I just don't think you can go there. Like, you don't have enough information. You just don't. So you got to assume he's trying to do his job, right? Like, if we're on an airplane, I assume the pilot's trying not to crash, right? I think he wants to fly. He probably wants to fly in smooth air. I bet pilots, rather have smooth air than turbulent air, right? And probably wants to land nicely, right? And avoid storms, So I trust that the pilot right now, policy, doesn't want to crash the plane. I feel like that's a fair default trust to have. Again, until you have enough data to suggest otherwise. So, yeah, I don't think that they'll let it continue on, even though he's got, the contract years. If the epic collapses continue to happen, I think they will fire him. I do believe they'll move on from him. I don't think they'll ride that out. I think you'll eventually say, okay, we've got enough data, just like they did with the Bills did with McDermott. Okay, got enough data, need to move on. And go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say I agree with you. Like, I don't think the length of the contract matters. I know people are all into this. They don't pay coaches and all this, and they're not going to pay them off if, for 3 to 4 years. Like, Mike McCarthy was still under contract when they fired him. He still had a contract that went longer. Mike Sherman was still under contract, right? Ray Rhodes lasted 1 year, so they had to pay off multiple years of Ray Rhodes' contract. Like, they want to fire him, they're firing him. They fired assistant coaches that had time on their contract still. Like, they will pay it. Like, don't get tied up in how long the extension is or how much it's worth. I'm telling you, like, they will pay it. And if they go through a bad season next year, where disaster, like, and they win 5 games or 6 games, they're going to make a move. Or if they go something similar like this, where they're falling apart going into the playoffs, and then they have an epic collapse or some kind of, choke job in the playoffs again, I think they're going to fire them. Like, I don't think they're okay with going through that more. So, like, don't get tied up in like, oh, he's got an extension, he's here for at least 3 or 4 more years. I don't think that's guaranteed at all. I don't think it's guaranteed at all either. Like, I think they want him to have success. I think they believe in him. But I also think if they go through this again, he's going to be in major jeopardy, no matter how long his contract goes for. They've done it before. They've paid off coaches who were still under contract. So, like, we can talk about, like, maybe they're cheap with the assistants, and that is entirely possible. I also think it's a little overblown, but
if Bisaccia is the highest paid non-head coach in the league, then that is overblown.
Well, I think he was the highest paid special teams, not non-head coach.
Okay.
There's coordinators, offense and defense, making more than him, but like at the time, he was either the highest paid special teams or higher than
something like that. Maybe highest paid assistant head coach.
Let's calm down. They will fire a head coach that has time left on his contract. So let's hope it. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, right? Like, we're Packers fans. Can we move on to 26 and support the guy and support the team and hope you can still be skeptical and stuff. And I know as soon as they start playing real games and they have to punt, or he makes a decision that you don't like in a game, or they lose, everybody's going to be all fired up again. Like, I told you they should have fired him. Like, fine, but they're not firing him right now. So can we kind of put it to bed and move on to other things? Like, we can move on to talking about who they should hire for defensive coordinator now, since that's the next big move, right?
Well, I like where Matthew Tan's at. MLS should give assistance to the offensive coordinator and not call plays. So let's just call this a hypothetical, right? Let's say they sat down over there at the Lodge Kohler in the bar there, where you had the Twitter people creeping on them so that they couldn't get away with just having a little drink after some discussions, in private, in peace. So they're sitting there, they're having a drink together, right? You got the 3 of them, LaFleur, Policy, Goody, they're sitting there. And Policy says, look, man, I'll give you the money you want, but you got to give up play calling. And LaFleur says, if that's the only thing it takes, okay. If that happened, we don't know about it. We won't know about it. They're not going to report that, because LaFleur has already said, I'm not giving it up. But there wasn't a giant sack of money on the table at the time either. So save face, you don't have to report that. You don't have to report the terms of a deal. I don't think we'll get to know. I mean, later on, we might get to an official filing or something with the team of what LaFleur's contract is. But they don't announce those things all the time. So we don't get to know what goes on.
They're not going to tell you how much money's on his contract. We're not going to know that.
So we may be getting what we want, and we just don't know it. We won't get to know it until it happens. So let's just say that that's what happens. They said, all right, fine, I'll give it up. And he goes, all right, who are you gonna bring in to call plays? And then they start having that conversation. That could have happened. We don't know. So that's one thing. You got to hold that, but leave room for that possibility in some way, shape, or form. Hey, here's what we think the problem is for these epic collapses. Here's what we think the solution is. Great, let's give it a shot. You have to give time for that to happen. If you put the solution in place, whatever the solution may be, you put that in place and it doesn't work, That's where I think the end of LaFleur's leash is, right? Like if you put that in there, say it's all right, somebody else has to call plays, and then that person that LaFleur brings in doesn't work, it's worse or the same, you're gone. The whole thing's done. You're moving on and you're changing, new offensive staff. You're resetting. That's what I think. And maybe whatever you think it is, whatever the problem may be, if it's a culture thing and they say, all right, well, we're going to establish these culture things and that doesn't change anything, you're gone. Like they're at this point where it's like, okay, here we've identified problem, we've identified solution, we're going to test solution. If it doesn't work, that's it. And that's where I think the contract doesn't matter. When they get to the end of the test of that solution, whenever that may be, that's it. Or it worked, and you win some playoff games, maybe a championship. But that's where I think like those conversations, I just would really have a hard time believing they didn't happen.
I don't think they gave him any kind of ultimatum. I don't think they're telling him he's got to give up play call. Like,
maybe not, but I think there was something, right? Like just whatever it may be. Here's problem. Problem is these epic collapses. All right, well, here's what I think solution is. Okay, you think solutions? All right, well, maybe that is a solution. All right, cool. I believe that conversation happened in some capacity. You know what I mean? Whether it's play calling or you got to bring in this type of guy on defense, or you should bring in this guy for the O-line, whatever it was. Like they had to have drilled into, dude, why did these problems happen? Well, here's why I think they happened, and here's what we think the solution is. And again, I think that's the leash, is you test that solution and it doesn't work, you're done.
I think they probably talked through things, and Matt has his ideas of what it is. And I think Ed Policy's there to support him and to give him the resources that he needs, if he needs resources, to, improve what he feels he needs to improve. I don't think it was like, here's Ed Policy's ideas on what he thinks is going on. I'm sure he has them. I'm sure they discussed them, but I think it's ultimately like, this is what Matt thinks needs to change and needs to improve. And here's how Ed and Brian and Russ Ball can support that part of it. Yeah. How they can all come together. And I think that's what it's about. It's about supporting and working together. I don't think there's any kind of like, you got to give up play calling and do like, no, I don't think they went to him with that at all. And I think if they did, they might as well just fire him at that point. Like,
well, it's kind of
if he went to them and said, like, I'm going to give up play calling because I think I can improve in these other areas if I give up play calling, then that's one thing. And I think they'd say, okay, if that's what you want to do, we support you on that. But I don't think they go like, well, you need to give up play calling. No.
My version of that is concise, right? I definitely think it's probably a much, like it's closer to what you suggested there, right? Like, all right, what does it take, Matt? And he says this, and they probably interject with, well, what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And I don't necessarily mean it. It just that's the social media version, right? Give up play calling, but the conversation is nuanced. It really is. And to Chris's point here, he says his strength is play calling. Totally agree, but right, again, we don't know, because his job as head coach is not limited to play calling, right? Like if that was his only job as head coach, he'd be a phenomenal head coach. His job is much bigger, and we don't know how they evaluate him in those other areas as head coach. But if they're saying, dude, you're an A+ head coach in these other areas, but you're still calling plays. Like if you could find somebody else to do this as good as you or better, you're going to get better in these areas over here. And that's just like we've talked about this. That's a classic like corporate conversation. Anytime executives are promoting people, they're talking to them about, dude, you're phenomenal at this, but you got to evolve. You got to delegate, right? That's the popular buzzword you got to delegate. If you could delegate, you'll do better at this. And I think that's a possibility. It's not, hey, dude, you suck at play calling, you got to give that up, because that's not true. It's not that he sucks at play calling. He definitely has weaknesses, and we can criticize those weaknesses. And I think other people have brought those weaknesses to light, but we've also seen his brilliance at play calling. He is very much a good play caller. He very much gets credit for developing Jordan Love. So the idea that our player development is borderline horrible, come on, Showers. Like point to me another organization that is just methodically developing franchise QBs. They're not doing it. right? And again, you cannot take away credit from Matt LaFleur for the development of Jordan Love. You can't do it. Like, he's absolutely getting credit for maybe not all of it, but some of it. I mean, yes, Tom Clements was in the room for sure. Who put him in the room? Matt LaFleur. Like, you got to give that. Like, you have to. But that's the whole thing. It's like he could be great at this, but when you're having those conversations of we want to invest in you for the future, we want to pay you lots of money. Yeah, I think that there's conversations about, well, if you delegated this, you could get better at that. That's just my thought. It's not, I'm not saying that is what happened. It just, that would make sense to me, right? Just my exposure to, that kind of, the corporate world, and not that football is the corporate world, but that's essentially what you're talking about. You're talking about a conversation between two executives, a head coach and a president of the organization. So yeah, it's not, hey, give up play calling or else. And it may not be play calling. Play calling is just kind of a placeholder for us. Again, it could be something else. Maybe something else is the solution to the epic collapses and fixing those things. But whatever. His time management. His time management in games is not good. He definitely needs improvement in that area. Does he hand that off to somebody else and delegate that? Or does he try to own that and delegate something else? Those are the things that go into that. And you can't, just guys, I beg you, don't believe that Ed Policy just walked up to LaFleur and said, hey, man, love everything you did. How much money you want? Like, it just didn't happen that way. There were definitely some things like, hey, like, we want to invest in you, but we got to, like, maybe do some things differently. And there's like request for input, right? Like, how can we do things differently from your perspective, coach? It's not just a gun to the head kind of, here's how we're going to do it now. I just think it'd be silly to think that no changes are happening at all. It may be like the most concise way to put all that. Like, to assume nothing's changing because they're extending Goody and LaFleur, I think that's silly. Like, I don't believe that. All right. So since we've spent the whole episode on this, we really didn't even get much into to the Hafley replacements. Let's go back to that. So who should versus who will replace Hafley? I think right now, what you have developing, especially with adding Sean McDermott to the market, and no telling if he's even interested in a defensive coordinator role or not. But it's kind of the old proven guy versus the young up and coming guy, right? And so, like, we already know about it's Christian Parker, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we already know about Christian Parker. I mean, what do you think they'll do? Do you think they'll go towards a Christian Parker type guy, or do you think they'll seek out like a proven guy like a McDermott, assuming he's interested in a DC situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he wants to be a DC, take time off. He might get another head coaching job. Who knows? And he was pretty good as a defensive coach, so that's hard to say. So, proven guy or one that hasn't done it, I think it could go either way. I think there's a couple, like, I think he's going to want to keep the scheme pretty similar to what Hafley was running, just because I think he feels really comfortable with what the results have been. I think he likes it better. I think he's even talked about how he likes 4 down linemen. Like, nobody plays too much of base, so like 3-4, 4-3, like, that's kind of like, don't pay attention to that kind of stuff, because nobody plays a lot of base. Like, base is nickel defense basically now. But I think he wants to keep something similar to what they had with Hafley. So he's definitely going to talk or interview his internal guys, DeMarcus Covington, Derek Ainsley, maybe Ryan Downard. Covington was a defensive coordinator just for 1 year before he came over. It wasn't a good year in New England, but like, that whole team was a mess. The head coach was in over his head. They didn't have a lot of time. Like, it's hard to judge Covington on that. And Covington came, I think he did a pretty good job as defensive line coach. Like, yes, Rashawn Gary wasn't good, but Devontae Wyatt was better. Kobe Wooden was better. Van Ness was better when he was healthy, right? Like, I think he was an improvement over what they had. And I think he's certainly a guy you want to keep on staff, whether that's just as a defensive line coach or if you were to get this promotion. But I think Covington's a candidate. I think Ainsley's a candidate. Ainsley had been a coordinator with the Chargers under Staley, but he wasn't calling it. So it was like Staley was calling it. So it would be new for Ainsley as well, but he's like a long time secondary coach, college a lot, and then went to the Chargers. So I think those are the internal guys, and it's interesting because a lot of the guys that LaFleur interviewed before or when he was hiring Hafley, a lot of them are available again now because the head coaches they worked for got fired. So like you brought up McDermott. Well, McDermott's coordinator was Bobby Babbage, who LaFleur interviewed, and he could go back to him again. There were the Ravens position coaches: Zach Orr, Anthony Weaver, Denard Wilson. He interviewed all three of those guys. They were position coaches. They all became coordinators, different places, and now their head coaches have gotten fired. So they're all potentially available. And I know there's a report that like he really liked Zach Orr. Zach Orr got the Ravens job. I wouldn't go Zach Orr. The 2 seasons with the Ravens weren't very good. But he's a younger guy, so maybe like you could get him on staff as a linebackers coach. I'm cool with that. Maybe not as a defensive coordinator, but like those guys you interviewed in the past they're available again. So if there's somebody you like, Raheem Morris is a popular name because 1, he won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator with the Rams, and 2, LaFleur knows him, as always spoke highly of him. They worked together in Atlanta and Washington. He's a highly regarded guy. Like I know there's people debating like, oh well, he didn't do that good as a defensive coordinator. He only was a defensive coordinator for 3 years, and one of them he got a Super Bowl with. You know, like we'll get more into like breaking down the stats and stuff, but that's a pretty good result. And they had a good defense. And I know they had Aaron Donald, but like if he comes to Green Bay, he's got Micah Parsons. So kind of this, you know, he goes from one Hall of Famer to a future Hall of Famer. But Raheem Morris would make sense. Brian Flores would be like the dream candidate, but I think it's going to be tough because he might get a head coaching job. And 2, if he doesn't, like Minnesota wants him back. His contract's up. Dallas wants him. He's talked to Washington. Like there's a ton of competition. It's going to be hard to get him, but like Flores probably would be my top guy if they could get him. And then you're talking like Jim Schwartz is out there potentially. He might get the Browns head coaching job, but if he doesn't, he's, you know, I don't really like him, but his defenses do produce and are really tough and physical to play against. So like he would definitely be on my list of candidates. And then another guy that's interesting who LaFleur interviewed in 24, he's not available, but you might be able to get him, is Aiden Dirty, who is the Seahawks defensive coordinator. He doesn't call the plays like the head coach McDonald does. So like technically they wouldn't have to give him permission to interview with the Packers. They could block it because it would be a lateral move, but it's really a promotion because he would call plays in Green Bay where he doesn't in Seattle. But that's like, that would be tricky. Like, would McDonald let him go and do that? Because it's technically not a promotion, but it really is because he would be a play caller. And he's got a good background. He was in Dallas with Micah Parsons as a defensive line coach. And then LaFleur interviewed him. And then at the same time, McDonald was getting the head job in Seattle, and he hired him to be his defensive coordinator. So, if they could speak to him, that would be great. And then Christian Parker, I think he's a really good candidate. Now, he doesn't have experience as a defensive coordinator. He hasn't called a defense, but he's been in that Fangio scheme. LaFleur likes that scheme. He's had trouble with Fangio defenses in the past. So, like, there's probably that respect thing. Like, man, that's a tough scheme to play against. Like, Fangio, he always has LaFleur's number. So, and LaFleur spoke highly of Parker in the past, had him on his staff as a quality control guy. Like, yes, he's young, but he's developed guys. And we can say, like, Quinyon Mitchell is one of the best quarterbacks. I know he's a first-round pick, and Cooper DeJean. Like, he took those guys as rookies, and they had huge impacts on a Super Bowl team. So, like, part of that's, they're very talented players, but it's coaching too. Like,
coaching matters.
He got those guys playing at that level right away. So I think he's a really strong candidate. The fact that, like, LaFleur interviewed him before with, 2 years ago, and he's already bringing him back in to interview him again, that kind of tells me, like, he's real interested in Parker. Not saying he gets the job, but, like, I don't think he would just – if he's bringing back a guy he interviewed before, I think he really made an impression the last time, and he's strongly under consideration.
Yeah, and it seems like, I mean, just based on the Hafley hire, and then the interest in Christian Parker, and then it does seem like there's a preference for the young and up and comer guy in that position. Now, I'm looking at it going, yeah, I like that, but I also really would love a guy who's been calling a mean defense for a while. Um, Being able to call a defense is something. It's I would say even harder than calling an offense because you're trying to constantly guess what an offense is doing. Where as an offense, you can come out and say, all right, well, if the defense is doing this, we're going to do that, and that's I think that's easier to manage than just constantly being reactive and hoping you have the right call for what the offense does. The guys that are good at that, man, like it's a big deal. So I'm interested, but I trust him, and it's one of those situations. If you've seen him do it, you've seen LaFleur do it with Hafley. He can do it. I trust him to do it. Yeah, he hired Joe Barry. I get it. We hired, like, it is what it is. But I think that's one of those things that he's learned from those mistakes, right? He seems to be preferring to go for, like, let's go find someone who's the most qualified instead of, trying to help my buddies out, and we went through that. He learned that lesson. I don't expect him to repeat that mistake. I don't expect him to just promote one of his buddies or give one of his buddies something that he, position he doesn't belong in. I think he understands how important that is at this point too, right? Like seeing how much of a difference that Hafley made, that had to have made his job easier. Now, he didn't necessarily demonstrate that with the catastrophic failures, but I gotta believe that he noticed, the difference between a Joe Barry and a Jeff Hafley, and it's like, all right, I gotta get a guy who's like Hafley and or even better. So I don't know, man. I certainly love the idea of the Jim Johnson style defense and McDermott coming in after all those years of that defense torturing the Packers. But I don't know that they will. I mean, even assuming that McDermott wants to go ahead and take a step back and not be a head coach, be a defensive coordinator, I don't know that they will go with the older guy that, the experienced guy, I should say. He's not even that old, but I think they seem to be leaning towards the young up and comer. So hopefully they strike again, man, because he nailed the Hafley hire. Absolutely nailed that. Nobody saw Hafley coming. I see Jim Leonard. That name is out there a lot. I know we can't do this segment without mentioning Jim Leonard, and I am a Badger fan, so I get it, guys. I remember when he went through Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's kind of regretting, I think, not maybe going with him over Luke Fickell, but that's one that you got to consider. And he probably qualifies as a young and up and comer, but he's an interesting one, man. It's just the way that players that I've heard speak about him. Yeah, he's one of those coaches that just, he seems to fire players up and inspire them to maybe play a little, overachieve a little bit, if I can call it that way. But that would be an interesting one, but that's where it's like, in LaFleur, I trust, right? If they don't pick Leonard, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, what an awful, like, you should have picked Leonard. There's a reason they don't, if they don't.
And Leonard, I think it helps now that he's gotten NFL experience on the Broncos staff, which is pretty damn good defense. He's coaching Patrick Surtain. They got a good secondary. Like, it helps that he has that experience. It's just a matter of, like, and I think he's interviewed for the Jets DC job, and I know it's out there. The Cowboys want to talk to him. Probably other teams as well. He's going to get a job, whether it's this cycle or next cycle, as far as defensive coordinator goes. But I don't know. Does LaFleur go back to him if he was turned down from him before? Like, are the bridges burned, or was LaFleur still interested in hiring him? I don't know. But he would be, if it was me, I would definitely want to talk to him. He would be one of the candidates for me. I don't know if LaFleur wants to go down that route again.
Yeah. Now, it'll be interesting. Hopefully we get a quick decision on this. Hopefully we're sitting here this time next week talking about the new defensive coordinator and what we think he can do. But, and you mentioned DeMarcus Covington too. You might have that internal hire or internal promotion. I shouldn't say hire. But yeah, and while I'm mostly against the internal promotions, in this case, he's only been there for a year. He is coming from a place of, he's seen some other things. So, I wouldn't be totally against that, because there's a lot of buzz around him, right? Everybody thinks that he's one of those up and comers that's not going to be there very long. He's going to get promoted, and
Well,
so yeah, I mean,
he's interviewed 2 places already, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's for defensive coordinator job now, so he's talking whether he gets one or not. We'll see. But like, yeah, he came from New England, so he saw a pretty much different scheme than what Hafley ran. Like, so maybe he can blend the two. And he did work under Belichick and then Gerard Mayo. So yeah, I mean, he's the internal promotion, but like, he's not really. He's only been on the staff for 1 year, so he's not really like their guy. Like, that they've moved up the ranks. Like, he came from elsewhere, and so I think he'll be a strong candidate. And I think if they did promote internally, it's either him or Ainsley. But I could see Covington getting it, sure.
Well, it'll be an interesting week to see how this goes.
Yep.
I don't know that we'll get movement at the other side of the ball and assistants or coaching assistants. Like I said, there's a temperature out there that suggests that the Packers don't want to move on from those guys unless they leave. So as much as I sat here and defended LaFleur tonight and Goody, you won't catch me doing that for the other two.
I think they're making some staff changes. I think we're going to hear about it pretty soon this week.
I think so too, and I think you had to get those guys set first. You had to get LaFleur and those guys set. You probably did. Yeah. You got to figure out the Hafley thing, and then you're probably addressing the others. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see which direction they go with those guys. And then switching gears a little bit here because we're towards the end of the episode now. Shrine Bowl week. So we got the Shrine Bowl ahead. All right. So practices start on Friday. So there'll be some media stuff on Thursday. Then practices are Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then the game is on Tuesday. So I will be out there, boots on the ground, watching practices, scouting these guys, watching one-on-ones and everything. If y'all have any interest in, getting a little bit of a custom scouting report back from the Shrine Bowl, let me know who you're interested in, who you want to see. It looks like a really talented group out there this year. Last year was fun, but I think there might be more guys towards the top of the draft board there at this one. I shouldn't say the top, but like I think there's more potential first rounders that are there this year, and some more guys that are maybe in the top 100 than last year.
There's another Packer coach coaching on.
Yes, Sean Mannion.
So
yes,
maybe you can get denied an interview with him too.
Well, you can be certain I will try. I will absolutely put the effort in to make sure I get denied if that's the fate. But we will get a chance to see. So if you guys are real deep football nerds about all this, and we're talking about coaching assistants and up-and-comers and everything, there's a heavy belief that Sean Mannion is one of those guys that's rising quickly. So we will get to see how he manages an offense, although it's a small sample size. It is meaningful because his job is very important here, right? He's getting a close look at these players. It's going to help with some of the evaluation. And, you might see a few of these guys drafted. The Packers definitely brought in some Shrine Bowl guys last season, most notably Mr. Nazir Stackhouse. He was a Shrine Bowl guy last year. So, yeah. There are definitely some potential future Packers that'll be out there on the field this week. We'll get, like I said, a look at Sean Mannion's offense and how he handles those things. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun week. Like I said, if you guys have anybody that, you'd like to see how they do in one-on-ones or you want to know a little bit more about them, hit me up on the Pack Weekly Pod Twitter or X account. That's just at Pack Weekly Pod. Let us know who you want to see. I'll try to drop some videos if I can, but, I'm going to be doing hopefully some daily updates. A little bit more involved this year than I was last year. Last year was kind of learning and figuring things out. It was a little bit intimidating, not going to lie. But, yeah, it's I'm excited. We should be able to get a lot of good content here, and it's draft nerd season. So if you guys are draft nerds, buckle up and hang out with us because we like to get into that, So even if you're a fan of another team, you might enjoy hanging out on the Pack Weekly Pod on Monday nights just for draft season. But that's what's going on this week. So next week we're going to dive into a little bit of a review. So by Monday we will have all of the practices in the book, and we'll be looking forward to the game the following day. But we also will dive into some free agent talk. hopefully we'll be able to talk about some news on the coaching front. Plenty to cover next week. Any final thoughts for us, Tim? Anything you want to say about all of the hot topics we got here?
No, just I think it's going to be busy the next couple of weeks between your coverage of the Shrine Bowl, new defensive coordinator coming in, or the search starting, and then any other changes they make on the staff. So it's going to be, it's going to be busy, even though they're not playing games, unfortunately. And yeah, that's all. And should we make conference championship game picks?
Oh yeah, I guess we should.
Do that real quick, right?
We can have some fun now here towards the end of the episode, where only the most loyal of the P-dubbers are hanging out. That's what I thought. Maybe we could call ourselves the P-dubbers. Pack Weekly.
Very good.
P-dub. So, I don't know. We can workshop it. But if you guys are still hanging out with us this far into the pod, then we can just have some fun with it. But did you enjoy your hate watch of the Bears losing? Because I did.
I did, but I'll be honest with you, man. When Caleb Williams threw that touchdown, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, they're just not going to lose. Like, at some point, all this luck's going to run out. And I was angry. I was angry.
You could see it on McDermott's
and before that,
McVay's face. Excuse me.
Everybody that kills Matt LaFleur for his play calling and gets too conservative. Oh my God, McVay! Are you kidding me? Run, punt.
It was bad.
I
was like, oh no.
Like with Stafford and Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, that's what you're doing?
Oh, I know.
Right? Like to a team that's like they play like crap for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden they come up like you're just giving it to them. Like that's when they're good. They're not
After
good.
That touchdown, you could see it on McVay's face.
Like, man, did he get conservative? He got so conservative. And then,
hey, but credit to him, he handed it back to him the next drive. It was all Stafford and passing. They didn't run the ball.
How about that catch by Devontae Adams for the first down?
Of course.
Thank you, Devontae. So, yeah, that was great to see. Caleb Williams threw 3 interceptions, including 1 in overtime. Hate to see it. We'll see next year if all these, turnovers that they got all year and all the lucky fourth quarter comebacks, there's going to be regression. They're not going to be as good next year, I'm telling you.
Hey, they are in not good contract territory too.
I saw that too, which is crazy. But
yeah,
we'll see.
So again, like before we go off and wanting to fire everybody on our side, let's go take a look around. Right, the Bears don't even have the big Caleb Williams contract on the books yet. They still have his rookie contract, and they're already in contract hell.
And they're 1 year in with Ben Johnson. Like they're already not in good shape. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Rams Seahawks, just real quick. I thought Rams were my pre-playoff Super Bowl pick, so I'm going to stay with them. That Seahawks defense is awesome to watch, though. I just don't trust Sam Darnold. At some point, he's going to throw some picks, and I think it might be this week. And the last time the teams played, Seattle won. It was up in Seattle. It was a shootout. But the Rams were up, like, I think it was 2 touchdowns. It was definitely 2 scores in the fourth quarter. And it kind of, like, they blew it. It was a little fluky. But the Rams moved the ball and scored points on that defense that nobody else really can do. So I think Darnold will turn the ball over a couple times. The Rams find a way. So I think the Rams, the AFC. I mean, the Broncos playing with a backup quarterback, that sucks. I partially want them to lose just because Sean Payton will talk endlessly about how good of a job he did with the backup quarterback for 2 weeks, and I don't want to hear about it. How great he did with Jarrett Stidham. I actually think they have a chance to win that game, but I'll go Patriots. So I'm going to say the 2 road teams win, and we get Patriots-Rams in the Super Bowl.
Well, I will deviate slightly. I think I definitely underestimated how good the Seahawks defense is.
They're good.
They're good, man. And I think that the Rams, I don't know how much juice they have left. It felt like it took every fiber of their being just to get out of that game in Chicago. I don't know how quickly you reload and get out there and get after it against a defense that good. I'm going to go Seahawks in that one. I think the Seahawks get back to the Super Bowl, but I think we get a Super Bowl rematch and we get the Patriots and the Seahawks. Maybe the Seahawks, if they get down to the goal line this time, they'll run the ball instead of throwing it. But yeah. So I do. I think that's where we're headed. I think we're going for a Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl. I don't know about scores. I just don't think that the Rams have that enough gas left in the tank, man. It really looked like it took everything they had in them to beat the Bears.
And it took everything to just get through the Panthers too. They played 2 road games, so that's a good point.
Yeah. I don't know how much they got left, but you got all the right, the right core guys there. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better head coach in the situation. You couldn't ask for a better quarterback. I mean, they got the pieces, man. They can do it, but it's going to be tough. I don't know if they're up for it. So I'll throw a few of these extra questions here on the end because I think this one's somewhat relevant. We got Matthew Tan says, "Are we cutting McManus?" Real quick answer, I think yes, and you're drafting a kicker. So if you guys hate the idea of drafting a kicker, you better brace yourselves.
I don't think they're cutting him yet. I think they're bringing in competition for him.
They'll bring in competition. I think he'll lose.
Competition.
I think he'll lose the competition. I think 2 of the guys that are on the board are at the Shrine Bowl this week. Both of them have great percentages beyond 50 yards, and both of them, their longest is 56. These are draftable kickers for sure. So brace yourselves if you hate that idea.
I hate
Hopefully not until day 3, right?
Do not draft the kicker.
Just brace yourself, Tim. I'm not rooting against you. I'm not saying that that's what I want. I'm telling you right now, the stars are aligning that you have multiple draftable kickers out there at a time where you probably don't want to go into the season with McManus. So
I don't want to go in with McManus, but I ain't drafting one either.
Brace yourself, dude. Brace yourself.
No.
And then finally, our friend Arshaush, does MLF make the DC call alone? Absolutely not.
Yes, he does.
So I don't think so.
He made the Hafley call himself. I think he makes this. I'm sure he'll discuss it with Goody.
It's a committee. I don't think he's in a vacuum. I mean, it might be his ultimate veto.
Ed Policy ain't sitting in on defensive coordinator hires. There's no way. And if he is, he's way too involved. He's not. Goody may have here are the guys. Do you need me to talk to other scouts or something? Who they know? Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's more what it's like a
sort of thing, but
a cooperative committee type thing. Yeah,
it's LaFleur's call, and I think he's the only one doing the interviews. It's his call.
I think in a position that important, I think you probably have. I don't think that it's not his final call. I think that there's just multiple. You got to get multiple perspectives. I mean, if you're going to interview somebody, you can interview them, but I don't know. I've hired people before, and I've always wanted at least somebody else's perspective. Hey, this is what I thought. Does that align with what you thought? And yeah, I think there's a committee approach, but yeah, I believe LaFleur probably has the final say in who he wants.
Absolutely. It's his call.
But to say that he makes the call alone, I think is inaccurate. I think there's multiple input. Here's who I would go with. Here's who I would go with. Here's who I would go with, and then LaFleur can take that and then make his call.
And technically, he can. He has control of his coaching staff, so it's his call. And it's his call.
But I think alone, maybe that's the word I have a hard time with. I don't think I think he's going to get a lot of input. But yeah, so we'll see. I trust him to make it, dude. Again, it's not like Hafley was just an obvious choice. If he went off and Hafley was a successful hire, but it was everybody was well, duh. I mean, he was the best candidate. We all knew it. That would be one thing. It's nobody knew who Hafley was.
Nobody brought up Hafley's name.
Nobody brought him up. And I think Showers, you had asked before if LaFleur was the one who made the call on Hafley, and did he do that on his own? I believe so, because I think the story was Shanahan and Saleh. He went and asked them, and they both unequivocally were Hafley, he's the guy. So that's where you can look at this and go, look, LaFleur's network ain't bad, right? Say what you will, he's got a strong network, right? Some of the best minds in football love that guy, and they will give him great advice, right? And even if it's at their own detriment. So I think that's probably a good reason to trust him in the situation. But yeah, I do. He did it with Hafley. I trust him to do it again. Whatever your method was for that, repeat it. So
let's hope so.
We shall see. Time will tell very soon. But all right, guys, it's been a fun evening here on the Pack Weekly Pod. thank y'all for hanging out. Always love hanging out with you guys on Monday nights, 9:30 p.m. Central, streaming live. And we got a lot to talk about. We're in draft season now, so come on back next week. You're going to get a full rundown of the Shrine Bowl. Got a lot of competition to go through there. A lot of draft prospects there that will be relevant to the Packers. As we mentioned, Sean Mannion running the offense out there, or one of them. So there's going to be a lot to talk about next week from the Shrine Bowl. And we're also going to go through the free agents, and for 2026, we got a lot to talk about. And hopefully we will have a new defensive coordinator to also talk about. So we don't get real Packers football for a while, Packers fans, but there is no shortage of Packers news to talk about. So come on back, hang out with us every Monday night, 9:30 p.m., streaming live. And if you want to support the pod, please spike that like button for us real quick right there below the video. It won't take you a second, and go on over to the Packers Talk Network YouTube channel and subscribe. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week. As always, go Pack.